to the Making Up the Numbers podcast. The Making Up the Numbers podcast is sponsored by Hope Technology, J-Tech Suspension, Revolution Bike Park, Ride Southern Spain, Schwal, and the world's finest independent mountain bike magazine, Singletrack.
Hello and welcome to our first episode of 2023, and in this episode we're going to be chatting with the Bulldog, Brook Macdonald, about, well, there's so much to chat about with Brook, but anyone who listened to the episode with Win will probably remember him telling us how when Brook came over to Europe he didn't know how to cook pasta, so we'll definitely be asking about that. But first, Jack, Emmy, it's been a while. Good Christmas?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yeah, good break and nice to see all the family and stuff. And as you can hear, I'm a little bit worse for wear. I've just got back from my best mate's stag do, skiing and partying for 5 days in Andorra. So you might have to bear with me a little bit this evening.
You've gone worse since this call started. You're getting worse. I hope it don't continue to deteriorate.
It's going to fluctuate, man. Like, it seems to be okay, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh my God, and then I'll come out of it again. So yeah, I'll stay with you, I promise.
Cool. Emmy, you all right?
Yeah, all good. Also had a pretty good Christmas. Went to Finale Ligure after Christmas for New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And for the Brits out there, I saw my old mate Fionn Griffiths. She was with us. She didn't ride because she's like recovering from an injury. So, but it was nice to see her. I haven't seen her in 3 or 4 years. So yeah, we had a good time. It was not the best weather, but at least it wasn't snowing. We have like about 20 centimeters in the garden right now. So
yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So the last few episodes have been a bit hectic and we haven't had much chance to chat. So tell us, what have you been up to for the last few months? Jack, how's the team coming together?
Oh, you've put me on the spot there. Yeah, so we're doing good. Obviously SS Suntour is still our partner sponsor and excited for yet another year with them. We have lost a couple of sponsors, obviously Commencal being one of them. I'm not quite ready to confirm who we're going to be going with. Pretty sure things are all set and agreed, just wait to sign the paperwork. So definitely next episode, hopefully we'll have some good news of what the team's doing. But yeah, it's just that lull phase, really just getting everything sorted and training on the quiet. I feel like I'm fully out of my injuries now, which is great, really refreshing. And we're heading back to Portugal next week to do a little bit of prep work. Just me, Sarah, Blake, and then 2 of my guys, Sam and Ruben. We're going to just do some track prep and make sure we're all set for our camp starting in February. And then from February, we're racing every month throughout till October, and they're all either national races or World Cups. So yeah, I mean, everybody keeps saying it's a late start to the season, but that's World Cup racing. We've got multiple national races going on before June. So yeah, just really excited and keen to get back at it.
Cool. Emmy?
Well, not really much like from the whole pivot side, but I'll be going to New Zealand in February, so for 4 weeks. So I'm looking forward to that. Since 2019, I haven't been there. So yeah, me and Cam really looking forward to go to the summer side of the world again, because winter has been quite harsh on us. We haven't seen the sun in a while here since December. But yeah, at least it wasn't like snowing, so you could ride, but it was very wet. So yeah, other than that, I'll see the team in New Zealand, and then Cam has a few training camps with Dorval later than in March. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that for sure.
How many times do you think you've posted that you're looking forward to it on Instagram now?
Not that, I'm not really been posting that much. I've put a few stories because obviously we know we have that team WhatsApp group, so they're posting, oh yeah, coffee meetup, blah blah blah, for coffee. Like every places that I love about New Zealand is just out there, and they're just like bragging about being there, and so obviously it makes you want to go, especially if you haven't been there in a while and it's almost your favorite place in the world.
Yeah,
so
I can understand that. I think I'd be counting down myself if I was going there, but I am going to Spain in a few weeks, ride southern Spain, so to race
Oh,
the
cool.
national at Ottawa, so that should be great. So in the last episode, we talked about the changes ESO announced that they were bringing in for 2023. Has there been any further update on that? Is there anything you can share with us?
Well, I know there's been a team managers meeting with ESO, and so there's been further discussions, and I've also heard that the team manager has been asking for an extended deadline on when they not have to, like, elite team have to register, because they've been discussing. I don't know exactly now how far they've gone, and it's also not really outside, but we're gonna have a next meeting with ESO next week about the format and what the riders thinks, but it takes a little bit of time because it's hard to be like on one side 100%, like, and we want to make sure we go at it in a positive way, you know, and not saying, oh, like, we don't want this, we don't want that. We want to like work in a proactive way, and that's like needs a little bit of preparation, and but for sure try to maybe work a bit together on the details of the new formats maybe, and like to make it something that the riders look forward to race, you know.
Why do the team managers want to extend the deadline? You know?
I think some of
maybe
it,
Jack, you know more.
Yeah, well, you'd think some of it would be financial. The prices have gone up massively, especially for elite teams that are doing more than one discipline. So it's January. Like, my sponsors don't pay us until March. I'm sure some of the other teams are a little bit like that, where some of the money comes in later in the year. So I think it's 18,000 for an elite team to be registering with two disciplines. I think that's right. So it's an awful lot of money to be fined. Some of it could be that. But yeah, it's as Emmy says, it's all just a bit up in the air at the moment. It's crazy. It's a good job it is a late start to the year. Who knows if everything's even going to be set. Yeah, exactly.
So we ran out of time in the last episode, but we were going to do a complete roundup of all the movers and shakers this off-season. So here's what I think we've got. So we've got Andreas Kolb staying with Atherton Bikes, Charlie Harrison retired, Charlie Hatton staying with Atherton Bikes, Gracie Hemstreet staying with Norco, Jacob Dewitt to Pivot Factory Racing, Jamie Edmondson to Chile Racing Brigade, Mark Wallace leaving Canyon for Norco, the Mayer Smith brothers to Giant, Ronan Dunn staying with Nukeproof, Simon Chapelet to Cube, and the announcement of a Madison Saracen junior development team with George Madley, Felix Griffith and Olivia Taylor, aka Liv Shreds. So those are all the confirmed ones, I think.
There's not a lot of movement there, is there? When you look at it written down, there's not a lot there. Like, shows how consistent it is where they stay with their teams.
Yeah, there's a bit more on the rumours. So,
well, there's a couple of these rumours when you get to them that we've seen in the last. Go on, get started, and I'll cut you off where there's
Jump
one.
In when you hear what. So Angel Suarez, Commensal 100% is no more, heading to Uno, we believe. Antoine Perron to Off Canyon Collective Pirelli, heading to.
Well, there we go. He's going to the Union, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
So that was maybe confirmed in the last couple of days.
Yeah, sorry, I missed
that.
Yeah,
well, no, it's all right. I can't remember who the other people are on there. Emmy, can you remember?
There's Frida running.
That was it.
There was Oliver Swaber. We thinking he moved on to FMD maybe, so he was on there. And there's like another. Yeah.
I saw the lineup. I can't remember who it was, but both.
No. There's like this new. His name is Christian Hauser or Christoph Hauser. Is like a new Italian guy.
That's
or like one. New. He's like first year junior and is like really really fast.
That's the one.
So yeah.
That's exciting.
Greg Williamson to Madison Saracen, we think. I imagine if they've announced the junior development team this week, they'll announce that probably next week, you would think.
Well, usually they start announcing anytime after the 15th of January, don't they, once that team registration's in. But if they're extending it, could go on a little longer.
Yeah. Henry Kerr to Canyon. You heard any more on that, Jack?
No.
You mean Canyon Factory?
Not sure.
or
We just thought maybe Canyon.
because Emilie Johnson is going to Canyon Factory, like not Canyon Pirelli or something else. So I would be surprised if another elite would join, but
Yeah.
I mean, I could be wrong.
Maybe Henry Kerr will go to Canyon Pirelli, because I know that after Dan had a good season in 2021 with that 10th at Maribor, that Canyon Pirelli team tried to come in and swoop him away. So Henry's kind of had a similar type of season to what Dan did, so that would make sense.
So Jordan Williams has said goodbye to Madison, heading to Specialized Factory Racing.
Yeah, so that's just been confirmed, hasn't it, today? He's literally an hour. Hop on Instagram, you can see Jordan's launch video there. So, Jordan off to Specialized, which is a very exciting team.
Making tea for the kids, so no, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, you got an excuse, mate. You got an excuse.
So, Louise Ferguson, full-time to Nuke Proof, and as you just said, Millie John set to Canyon. Oliver Zoir, we think, to Follow My Dream.
Wonder where his brother's going then.
Isn't he staying with Union?
Was he still on that rider list? Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm going to look at the Union now.
I think they're both on it because, I'm not sure.
He was on it, but I'm sure he was leaving. But I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again.
Join the Union. There we go. So
I'm racing you.
Antoine Perron and Christian Hauser, like you said, Emmy. But there isn't the full team list. I've seen that.
There was a pit. Yeah, I saw.
Well, Frida is for sure on it, but then there's like another guy with blonde hair, like a longer blonde hair.
Mackie Stevens McNabb.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, he was already on it though, wasn't he?
I think so. I'm sure.
No.
Lars will leave it.
Yeah, it looks like it.
So it's gonna be interesting to see where he's gone.
Yeah.
And someone must be going to Scott, no?
Yeah.
If they didn't have Kolb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't know about that.
I mean, Dean Lucas is training like fuck. I don't know if anyone's seen his Instagram, but he had that 10th place finish in 20 overall in 2019, and he looked like he was starting to break through. And then 2020 COVID, he missed out, and since he's come back, he hasn't really done it again. And he seemed a little lost. He's certainly looking in from the outside. It looked like COVID had changed him a little bit. Whereas looking at his social media now, it just looks like he wants to race and have it again. So maybe Scott have said to him, look, you're going to earn this ride or what? So maybe they just keep their current lineup, and they've shot a rocket up Dean's arse, and we'll see what he does.
So Sam Blenkinsop said goodbye to Norco. I heard rumours of him going to Prime Bikes, which I believe is his old mechanic.
I think is that what Wynn said? I can't remember.
No,
I haven't heard anything about Sam.
Thomas Stack and Hugo Frick still on. New Commensal team.
I think that's pretty much a given.
Yeah, there's Iniges is going on a team too.
He's going with them. That's the one.
Yeah, it's going to be 3 of them.
Yeah.
Which Iniges?
Matteo, like the older one. Rafael is taking over the Commensal V team with Silvan de Velden, and he's taking over the management. Yeah.
And Veronica Vidman to Nuke Proof. Any more for any more? But like you say, there's not a lot of big moves there, is there? Most people stayed, I think. How do you think we did out of 10 with our rumours?
Pretty good, I'd say. Get people interested. We got to make more.
We haven't said anything outrageous for one.
No, I mean. So there's a few others that are floating around. What about the people who had good seasons last year? Austin Dooley?
I think Austin's staying with Commensal USA. I think they look after him.
Yeah, I've heard that too. When I saw him in Whistler, he was like probably staying on the same program. He has a bit more support, but I think it goes well for him.
And Antoine Vidal? I think he's just broken his collarbone, hasn't he?
Yeah, but again,
he's staying with Cecile. He has a good setup there. He needs his little Cecile mama, otherwise he's gonna be in trouble. It's like no, but I really like Antoine, but he's like
He's wild.
Impossible to manage. Like you need
Right,
someone
okay.
like Cecile to is actually a bit of a loose unit herself to like keep it in under control.
And finally, you might have to help me out with the pronunciation here, Emmy. Antoine Roguet? Is it Roguet or Roge?
I would say Rog, but
Rog.
Rog.
the E is probably silent.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Rog or Roge,
Yeah,
but I would say
season
Rog.
last year.
Yeah. Yeah, he's done very well. He's very like kind of quiet guy, I feel like, when I talk to him, and he's like, but I haven't heard anything. I think I haven't heard anything about it, but probably like the comments are like support for priority is pretty good too at World Cup. So
Yeah.
you think twice before like changing bikes and doing something else, I think.
So who do you think's done well? Specialized Gravity looks a frightening prospect, really, doesn't it? With Loic, Finn, and Jordan.
It's almost like going to be a battle of two teams, isn't it? When you look at it on paper between Specialized Gravity and Syndicate. Laurie, Greg, and Jackson versus Loic, Finn, and Jordan.
You tell that to Cam, and she'll slap you in the face.
I
Second.
I just mean on paper. I just mean
on paper.
Just those three dudes written down against those other three.
I know,
dudes,
like it's like the legends, more like the names. But I think, yeah, you're right.
I was wondering what the chances are of a 1-2-3 Loic, Finn, and Jordan, like the Mondraker at World Championships in 2016.
Yeah.
There's always a chance.
Yeah. So, seeing as we have a bit of time, I thought we could do a few of the quick hypothetical questions. And the first one is, who do you think will be the next rider to win their first World Cup? So I've got a few potential names. Doing the men first. Jackson Goldstone, Jordan Williams, Andy Kolb, Dakota Norton, Bernard Kerr, Benoit Coulange, Lucas Shaw, Ronan Dunn, or someone else completely.
This. Can you see it?
I can. The list
BK Sports, baby. I'm gonna make Jack very happy with my answer. No, I'm just kidding. It's Bernard Kerr for me. I have to say it.
You're coming around slowly.
Come on. Even if you don't like the guy, he deserves it. He's been around for too long. Let the man retire finally. So we can have some peace.
Do you think he'd retire if he won a World Cup?
Oh, for sure. He announced on the podium. He always said that.
Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah.
Name that stands out to me is Benoit. Simply because of the rate of progression. So, like, I mean, you could say the same for Colt, but like Lucas Shaw, Dak Norton, Bernard, they're three who've been around forever and just haven't done it. Obviously, unbelievable riders with great lists of results, podiums for all of them. And then you've got three youngsters, Ronan, Jordan, and Jackson, probably going to have those years where they're trying to find their feet. You've got one there in the middle who, over the last 3 years, has just progressively been getting better and better and better, has then gone on to qualify first, second at World Champs in 2021. So it could, obviously, they're all capable, including Bernard, Emmy. But yeah, the name that stands out to me is Benoit, and if I was putting my money on the table, it would be on him.
See, if I was putting money down, I'd put it on Jackson. He came in and won Hardline straight away.
Yeah, but Hardline's not a World Cup, is it?
I know.
It's hard for completely different reasons.
BK Sport was out of the game in Hardline.
Yeah,
crashed his brains out. And he was like, no, but I mean, I love Jackson, but he was only like 1 second faster than BK's qualifying time with almost broken hand. So, I mean, I know it was amazing, for example, for him at his first event. But I don't know, like, they all have the potential, and Jackson and Jordan probably more potential than the other. But I don't know. So it'll be hard for both of them. I think first year.
And Andy,
we got to remember this conversation.
Yeah.
If any of these guys win a World Cup this year, we will keep track. We've got to summarize, or even if not, we've got to see who was the closest.
So I have an Andy Kolb question for you, and I've heard a rumor this weekend that there was a big money offer from Scott, like you said, Emmy, but he turned it down for a bit less and stayed with Atherton. I think he's 26 years old. He's had an amazing 2022, European champion, 4th in the overall, multiple podiums. Will he ever do better than that?
I think so, because it wasn't one result. It was consistent podium pace. And then towards the end, it looked like race-winning pace that just didn't quite come through. So, yeah, I think he's looking like the real deal. And, you know, obviously the stars have got to align with things like injury and, you know, all the variables that we have to deal with in the sport. But, yeah, I think he's going to keep on giving.
I think if the ESO rules are, you know, the amends are as advertised, I think it puts him in a much better place because...
I was about to say that. Like, he's one of the most consistent rider. Like, having a semi and a final on the same day will definitely be to his advantage, I would say.
Yeah.
And protected for the finals all the way through. So
here's another one.
Yeah.
Think about this, like what you've just mentioned, George, about the ESO and the new rules with the top 5 riders who are protected now from that semi into the final. How many of you would have put money down that 2 of those riders would be Andy Kolb and Bernard Kerr? I fucking won them. Like, it's crazy how that's worked out. It's going to be interesting to see how those 2 riders.
But to be honest, I think the protection rules might change. Like, there's a good chance. I think the riders are not really happy with it, and we're going to try to push to make it either no protection or a larger protection.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a painless change for ESO, really, isn't it? There's some things that are hard to.
Yeah, some harder things to discuss.
Choose your battles, Emily.
Yeah.
And in the women's, next woman to win a World Cup, Jess Blewett, Eleonora Farina, Gracie Hemstreet, one of those, or someone else?
There could be so many though. Like, there could be Monica Rasnik. She was like second so many times. She won some qualifying. Obviously, I would favor like someone young, like Jess. Because Jess has progressed really fast, and she's someone with raw pace. So she's not the most consistent yet, and she had really gnarly injuries. So if she can find like that speed without risking too much, she could be for sure close to win. And who knows? I think for Phoebe Gale or someone like that, if we get like a really crazy conditions somewhere and someone get a little bit lucky being like first off or whatever, you know, any one of these 10, if there's only 10 girls, which is something we might try to change, but if there's only 10 girls, everyone can be up there, I think.
So which do you think will happen first? Do you think there'll be a new first time winner in the men's or the women's? You see, it's weird because to me, the men's field is so stacked. But the women's, I think, I can't see anyone outside Valley, Cam, Nina, Miriam, Marine, Tani winning a World Cup. For a while, I just can't see it. So I think it'll be the men's first. I think it's...
To be honest, I don't want to say that, but I think it's going to be the men's too, because I think sometimes the women have like a better, it's like a positive thing. They have a better judgment of like how to pace the race run, and sometimes they do less mistakes, or like they're more consistent of their own level, instead of like the guys someone like Ronan and Bernard in snowshoe would just like push so hard that they'll make mistake, but they'll still like manage to like get on the podium and something. But yeah, I think it's like different. There's more like risks to win, I think, in the men sometimes. And that pays off.
Yeah, I had gone men's as well. The gaps are smaller. The difference between Bernard winning in snowshoe is probably a much tighter gap than one of the, as you say, the girls who haven't won yet. They're more like 5 to 10 seconds back from their first win. But like you said, I mean, there's some very talented young women in there who are going to make progress quite quickly. So who knows, towards the back end of the season, you might see someone like Jess really starting to threaten that top spot.
But I think it's also like a little bit different because now we have Jackson and Jordan, which are really like the almost exception. Like there's been Loic that's been doing that, but having Jackson and Jordan as potential name for a first World Cup as first year lead, that's like, it's a bit crazy, right? And most times you need like maybe 2 years or something to like get close to it. And Ronan has done it this year as his first year, but like for the girls, sometimes it needs a little bit more confidence because obviously as a junior you don't qualify, you seed only, and that's also adding a lot of pressure onto the women's field. But I mean, now they're changing it probably next year to like qualifying for junior women, so maybe it will help them to like make that next step a bit easier.
And part two of this question, there are 9 current riders in the men's with 1 World Cup victory each. They are Brooke Macdonald, Finn Isles, Laurie Greenland, Martin Mays, Matt Walker, Reece Wilson, Remy Thirion, Sam Blenkinsop and Thibaut Deprella. Which one of those will be the first to win another?
I know what Emmy's going to say straight away. Shall I answer for you?
But the first race is Lenzerheide. I don't know about that. So we could see a big surprise in Lenzerheide. I don't know what the junior times were last year. Maybe you know better than me. If Jordan or Jackson were close. Remember. But I don't think like someone like Ronan Dunn could win Lenzerheide. It's not like the track for him. But yeah, I don't know. I would like Bernard to win another one, but I don't think it's going to be Lenzerheide, unfortunately.
So which one of these to win the second? Finn?
Well, there's the 4 that stand out to me: Finn, Laurie, Matt, and Thibaut. They're the 4 that stand out to me.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
How do you pick between those 4? They're all so similar. I'd say I'd go with momentum and I'd go with Finn.
Yeah, I think I
thought that would have been your answer, Emmy.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's between Finn and Thibaut.
Yeah.
Laurie could do it as well. Maybe those 3.
You could see Matt Walker doing it as well.
Right, as I say, I would have been happy picking any of those 4 names.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
That's part 1 done and dusted. We'll be back with the Bulldog after these messages. I'm delighted to be joined on the podcast for the first time by the Bulldog, Brook Macdonald. How are we doing, Brooke?
Very good, thank you.
Excellent. That's not actually true, is it? We had a bit of a chat in Fort William, but first time on the pod proper. So I have to start with that Windmasters revelation that you arrived in Europe and you didn't know how to cook pasta. You didn't know that you had to put water in. Is that true?
To be honest, I can't recall that moment, but probably definitely would have been something along the lines of that, because I was fresh out of New Zealand, out of home, so I hadn't really done too much cooking. I had a lot of my mum's home cooked meals, so I was a bit, you could say, I didn't really know how to cook. So yeah, I was thrown in the deep end. I had Win with me, who obviously experienced being away from home and having to fend for himself and cook for himself. So he sharpened me up on my cooking skills pretty quickly.
Good role model to have.
Very good role model. Very good. Yeah, I feel like I definitely wouldn't be where I am now without the likes of Win and Blinky. I think those two have been a huge play in my career to get me to where I am now. And I just think from local races to helping me trip around New Zealand and race national series to being fortunate enough to spend time on a team with Win, actually multiple years. So yeah, he's played a huge role in where I am today.
Cool. Well, let's rewind a little from the Ancelotti days, because 2008 you started racing World Cups as a first-year junior, and you got 5th at Worlds in Val di Sole behind Josh Bryceland. Tell us a bit about the journey from New Zealand to getting across and racing World Cups, because it was meant to be rugby, right?
Yeah, that was where my path was heading until I discovered mountain biking. And for a long time I was riding mountain bikes and playing a lot of rugby, and this was when I was at high school. So I was I would play rugby on a Saturday morning, and then I would go with my gran on a Saturday afternoon to mainly Wanganui, where we had where Wanganui had a pretty good winter series. So I'd just go across there Saturday afternoon and hang out with Blinky and Eddie and Win, and we'd just ride and then race on a Sunday and come home. So I did that for a long time, and I didn't fall out of the love of rugby. I just kind of liked the whole concept of mountain biking, and that it was an individual sport and you raced against the clock. And I was pretty, I guess, like I was a person that was chasing adrenaline. So that sport definitely had probably a lot more adrenaline in it than rugby did.
What position did you play?
I played first five. So I played first five for a long time. I played in the forward pack for a bit. I like to say I was a bit of a utility player. I could play most positions. So yeah. And then, obviously I kind of had to make a decision between what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to carry on with rugby or pursue mountain biking. And the first trip we did was down the South Island for like my first national series, and that was with my I think I went with my grandmum and granddad, and we just raced 3 races down there. And basically from there I got some pretty good results in under 17, and we had a pretty strong field, so the racing was always really good. And then after that I basically travelled with Win for the next probably 2 years down south, and we just sort of made a trip out of it. I think we'd go for a month between the races and just ride bikes, and that's where everything sort of kicked off and got me to where I am today.
Cool. So that 5th place at World Champs, that must have given you a huge amount of confidence.
I guess with the field that I was racing against, like the likes of Remy and Josh and Sam Dale, I didn't actually really know at the time. I kind of, World Champs is a top 3, and anything, below that is still an amazing result. But, to be on the podium at World Champs is the biggest, achievement you can get from World Champs. So 5th place for me was obviously a huge, huge bonus. But at the time, obviously, I knew that I wasn't, there was no potential of me being in the top 3. But, I kind of didn't really know where that would take me. I kind of just thought 5th place in the world, like not knowing that it was going to give me a ride for the following year. And Win and I mainly Win, I think he kind of sourced the Ancelotti deal, and then I come along with it. So that's how my career started for racing World Cups.
Well, we were just about to move on to that. So 2009, you joined Ancelotti, and this was the time when there wasn't the separate junior category at World Cups. So you got 25th at Fort William, and then at Canberra Worlds, you took the junior title ahead of Danny. Is that right? Sure, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we remember right, it's quite a flat track as well. How was that race?
It was horrible, to be honest.
I agree. I'm glad you're saying that.
Did you race that
I
one as
didn't,
well?
Yeah.
at that time, all I knew was riding bikes. Like I didn't know, and I guess for a lot of us athletes at that time, like trail bikes wasn't a massive thing, and for a lot of my career, I would just like literally push up a hill, and I felt like that was my fitness. But even at the time, I wasn't even thinking about fitness. It was just more so relying on talent, and obviously being young, you had fitness there. So I didn't really have an understanding of what fitness was about or what specific training you had to do to race a World Cup or how fit you needed to be. So I kind of, when I come home, I can't remember what race I come home from, but I had like 6 weeks in between from when I come back from Europe to Canberra, and I literally spent like 6 weeks at my grand's house on a farm, and I literally just try to seclude myself because at that time I was 16, 17, so I was like socializing a lot, and partying was a big part of my life then. So I kind of like knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that obviously in 2008 I got 5th place at World Champs, so I wanted to do better than that. And I didn't know that I could win World Champs. I would have been happy with a top 3. So I just went to my grands and spent a whole heap of time on a wind trainer with this like hardtail Scott cross country bike that I bought, and set it in her living room, and I would just sit there and do like 5-10 second sprints, not really knowing what I was doing. And literally, like when I finished that, when I was ready to go overseas, like there was just like big black tire, like little, from the rubber, like when it melts on the wind trainer, it was just all up her walls. And to me, like I thought, yeah, I've been training hard, like I've put that in. And then to be honest, it actually paid off, because like I felt like I was half decent. My fitness was half decent, and yeah, like I was pretty strong, so I felt like that bottom section at Canberra really suited me, and I really enjoyed the track up until that bottom bit. But yeah, I just knew that like if I put a massive effort into the bottom section, that it would pay off in some way of a good result. And yeah, I happened to end up winning the Junior Worlds, which was pretty awesome, because like obviously Danny and Sean O'Connor were the favourites, and to be standing with those two beside me was a pretty special feeling. And to do it on an Ancelotti, which a bike is made out of their garage, and that was probably the biggest highlight of their careers. Me winning World Champs on their bike, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. When you look down the list of junior world champions, nearly all of them have gone on to be fantastic elite riders. Were you conscious of that after winning? Was there any kind of expectation or pressure you put on yourself moving into elite?
No, not to be honest, not really, because like you were saying, Jack, with when I was racing, all I knew was elite category, and like we kind of, whether we qualified or not, we still were qualifying with the elites, and it was just like there was a little small mark on your name with I think like a J maybe, meaning junior. So like the transition for me wasn't actually that bad. Whereas I feel like now, if it was back then, it probably would have been a lot harder. But obviously there was a small amount of pressure on myself to do good, and being world champ too was like, everyone was sort of looking at me. But I also think, which was, cool then, was that like with now, like you didn't actually get the chance to wear your world champs jersey at races. So I thought that was pretty cool. Like, I didn't have that pressure of putting on obviously I moved into elite, so I couldn't really wear it. But, I felt like if I did do that in junior, first year going into second year, wearing a world champs jersey would be a lot more pressure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like the transition was pretty easy for me.
Nice. Well, I can tell you something actually. Got a funny kind of podcast fact here. You may not have had much pressure like that you had on yourself at that first Elite World Cup in 2010, but you did put some pressure on me because you won't even remember this. But that Maribor 2010 World Cup was my first ever World Cup. I was still at university at the time, and you followed me down in qualifying. Can't imagine you even know that, do you?
No, I can't remember that.
And I literally sat in that start gate and looked behind and saw it was you, and I knew you were the junior world champ for the year before, and I shit myself. And the last thought I had leaving the gate was, he's going to catch you. He's gonna fucking catch you. So yeah, you may not have
the worst feeling, eh?
Made me ride well, I beat you.
Yeah.
Qualified 45th. So yeah, motivation I needed.
I can beat it, Jack. I can beat it. I can beat it. So my first national it was Fort William, and it was, I think Emmy was there. It was the one where the gondola, they didn't do the gondola, so we had to push up to like.
Oh yeah, for sure I was there.
And there was like that 50-yard long muddy chute.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Oh yeah.
So my first practice run at a national, I'm looking down this chute. There's elite riders lining this chute, 3 or 4 deep on either side. And I look behind me as I'm about to set off, and I've got Remy Thirion behind me. And I was like, put it this way, I didn't beat Remy Thirion, Jack.
That is one of the only times I think I have beaten Brooke, but yeah, it's an experience I'll never forget, I tell you. Okay, anyway, so 2010 moved up to elite, and you finished the season really strong. 6th at Champery, 13th at Val d'Isole, 8th at Wyndham, and then 12th at Worlds, and that continued into 2011. 3 World Cup podiums, 3rd at Fort William, 3rd at Mont Saint Anne, 5th at Wyndham, 6th in the overall. You must have been buzzing with those first 2 seasons.
Yeah, I was, to be honest. Like, again, like, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was literally just riding my bike and having so much fun. And I think, like, those 2 seasons, like, looking back on them, were probably, like, the best seasons that I've had in a way of actually enjoying riding my bike and having fun and just, like, going out and racing and not feeling the pressure. And, like, you know, that first podium that I had in Fort William was crazy because I think G1 maybe. I don't know. I was standing on the podium with Danny. I know Danny was second, maybe.
I'll get this for you in 1 second.
Maybe Greg, yeah.
Greg. I think it might have been Greg.
Yeah, maybe Greg, Danny, and then me. So yeah, to be standing on the podium with those guys, like, you know, flat pedals, a guy who wasn't, like, overly fit, was a huge, just a huge confidence booster going into that season. And then, I guess, like, those other 2 podiums, they just come along and, like, like I said, I just enjoyed myself and had a whole heap of fun with the team I was on. Like, I had, you know, Stevie, I had Luke Strobel win for 1 year, and then also Philip Polk. So we had a real strong team, and just the whole team dynamic and the way everything around the team worked was really good. And we all just, like, rode bikes, partied, travelled, and just loved life.
Yeah, I can confirm that for you as well. It was Greg, Danny, yourself, G, Aaron, top 5.
Yeah.
What a
Wow.
podium.
So yeah, I mean, like to be in amongst like those guys who like are pretty well decorated riders, even at the time, you know, was pretty outstanding.
Definitely. So 2012, you then moved on to Mondraker. Not quite as consistent a season, but you took your first World Cup win in Val d'Isère. Tell us a little bit about that weekend.
Yeah, so I mean, like, if I can elaborate on that season, Mondraker actually had just come out with this the zero stem. So like we had Caesar come out to New Zealand with Marcus Pico and myself, and we did a bunch of testing. We did testing with the stem, and we were literally just riding one steep track. So at the time, that stem was pretty good. Like I didn't really notice a whole heap of difference. But yeah, like that stem caused me a lot of grief. Caused me a lot of grief that year. I was just like, I was crashing so much, and I was always just like trying to figure out what was going on, and like, you know, Fort William, I was crashing every single run, I remember, and like even in my race run, I crashed, and it got to like probably 2 weeks before Val d'Isère, and I was just like, fuck this, man, I need to try a 45 stem, like I need to try this. Put it on, and it was night and day difference. Like it made everything so much better. We also like had a lot of trouble with suspension at that time. Like Mazzocchi had sort of like come on, but weren't like huge into the racing scene. So we also didn't have the greatest support from them, and just like the people around. Like the sport was good, but just the people around didn't really have too much of a idea of racing. So yeah, once I put that stem on, and then they brought in another dude from Mazzocchi, like my world changed, honestly. Like everything from there went really well, and basically when I put that stem on 2 weeks prior to winning my World Cup, and then went into Val d'Isère with that stem and good suspension set up, but yeah, everything changed, and I went from someone who was, I don't know, struggling a lot to ride my bike and feeling like, what am I doing wrong, to someone who was just like on top of the world, you know, especially winning a World Cup, you know, being in front of the likes of G and Greg and Aaron and Ratboy was massive. And I knew that weekend, like from when I qualified, I think I qualified third. So I kind of had a pretty good idea of like how it was potentially going to end up. And I just felt really good on that track. And yeah, happened to end up winning it. And basically from there, my whole career changed. My life changed. I went from, someone who was obviously a podium rider to winning a World Cup, and then, you know, everything sort of everything opened, like all the doors opened for me for, you know, bigger contracts. It made me realize, like, if I actually want to make a career out of this, I have to put my head down and, you know, work and train and actually get a trainer on board and, you know, get the necessary things that are going to make me potentially win more World Cups.
Yeah, Brooke, so you just mentioned it. 2013, big move to track. So that's obviously like a huge step. You started your season on the track team really well. You won national champs. And then also you second at the first World Cup in Fort William, which you seem to like. Then 2013 kind of like tailed off a bit after that. But in 2014, I got a couple of podiums in Logan, win them, fifth at Worlds, and also kind of the same towards 2015, constantly around the top 10, and the season with a fourth in Val d'Isère. There's a lot of solid results, but obviously, after that win in Val d'Isère, like, how do you look back on that time with Trek?
To be honest, like that move to Trek was a huge game changer for me. Obviously, being able to work with Martin Whiteley, who has been in the sport for over 25 years and ran multiple teams. Obviously, I was a little bit nervous because, like I knew Martin ran a tight ship and I didn't really know what to expect or how to approach it. But I felt like I fell into that team pretty well and adapted to everything. And those 3 years, I definitely learned a lot about time management, how a team's run, and just how everything around that team was professionally done. Obviously, being Trek, there was a pretty solid budget, so there was nothing limited. So we got to, Martin really looked after us with staying in nice accommodation and eating good food. So like that, really paid a huge benefit in those 3 years there. But I think just the whole, like, if I was to look back on those 3 years there, I think the biggest thing that I liked about that was obviously the organisation and, the time frames that we had to be on time. But I think just the general team environment of like literally not having to worry about a single thing but racing was the hugest thing for me, because obviously, as you know, Emilie, like, and Jack, like the biggest thing is that in racing is that you focus on one thing, and that's riding your bike and riding it fast, and then everything around you is done by the people involved in your team. And I felt like with Martin's team, like literally everything, like that really made everything a lot easier. And I think that's so important in a team. And I obviously, like, when my time came with Trek, there was I think like Trek didn't want to continue with Martin, so we were all kind of left with it heading our own ways. But I think like I definitely learned a lot of life lessons from Martin, and took them to other teams. And like obviously where I am now, I like a balance between all that stuff, and I definitely like a bit of a loose program, but also I like a program that works and can make life easy.
Yeah, I know for sure a lot about loose programs. You know that. No, but obviously, like, it must have been great to be working with Martin. I've listened to a few podcasts of him recently, and you learn always so much. So it must have been a great experience for you. 2016, you move on to GT, and it's not really a big secret that you didn't really just didn't gel with the bike, and it was reflecting on your result as well. You had 2 seasons on that bike. What didn't you like about it? Was there like something specific?
That was a rough 2 seasons. I struggled a lot there. I definitely didn't gel with the bike, and I think a lot of us on the team didn't gel with it. I think like the bike was quite old. It was obviously a design from the Athertons, so it was designed around them and how they rode. So, I thought joining GT, like, definitely there shouldn't be an issue there, because obviously what G had done on that bike was pretty phenomenal. And, I thought, well, if G can do it, I can do it. But it definitely wasn't the case. So I think, like, obviously I struggled so much with the bike, and I think like my riding style definitely didn't suit that bike. And at the time when I joined, I felt like the bike was definitely outdated. It did need a lot of work done to it. And I could not get on with it well. And as like as soon as I started going fast on it, it definitely was a bike that just became dangerous, and I didn't have an idea of what it would do. So it was super unpredictable going into race runs. And like, I think my best result in those 2 years was an 8th at Mount St. Anne, and I honestly thought that was like a winning run to me, and it felt like a winning run on that bike.
Yeah.
So those 2 years were real difficult. And
Did you have any chance to develop it at all, like to like work on a bike, or?
Not really. Like that first year, I was so angry, like just with, I don't know, just the results that I had. Like I put in so much work in the off season because obviously, new team and like new motivation, and I was just like, yeah, this is going to be good. And then it kind of like my expectations were never really met. And then, I don't know, I got to a point where I was just like, fuck this. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to ride a different bike? Like, do I just ride something that's blacked out? I got to a point where I was just so down, and I was willing to do whatever it took to, get me to where I knew I was capable of getting to. And then going into the second year, obviously we did have like a bike that we tested in the middle of the season, well, sort of towards the end of the season after Mount St. Anne. I went back to America for 3 or 4 days and done some testing on a mule bike, which was a huge, huge difference from the old bike. And then, I ended my season, and we sort of like GT, I guess, like couldn't really give me a timeline of when we were going to have a new bike. So I was pretty worried on like if I stayed with them, would I go into the next season with the same bike and not having a new bike? So, I had the option of MS come along, and I just knew that was probably a good decision to go there and in my contract with, finish out my contract with GT, because I didn't really have a clear picture on when we'd have a new bike.
Did they launch a new bike the next season? Because the next season was when Martin Mays won Le Bresse, wasn't it? So did he win?
Yeah.
Did he win on the new bike, or did he win on?
But I don't know. I can't quite remember when they launched that bike, but we said to them, like, I need to have a bike within, January, February at the latest, so I could start riding and testing it, but they couldn't give me a clear picture on that. So I was like, well, I don't really want to put myself in that situation again and have another potential season like I have the last two.
So 2018, as you said, back to Mondraker. First question, seeing as how we're talking bikes, that bike, the one Cesar Rojo designed, if you had to pick between that one and the new one, which one would you pick?
Oh.
I guess you guys could tell what one I'd pick.
Tell me a bit about how they're different. How do you find they're different?
Well, to be honest, obviously Caesar left Mondraker, so that design from 2019 changed into 2020. They brought in a couple of new engineers, and don't get me wrong, the engineers are great, but I don't think they had like a whole heap of knowledge of mountain biking in general or racing specific.
Yeah.
And obviously with 2020, the season was pretty short, so we kind of got a new bike. We got an alloy bike, and we raced, Laurie and I. Well, Laurie did a bunch of testing on it, but I know he's had a lot of struggles and issues with changing stuff on that. And for me, 2020 season was just a season of getting back on my bike and racing. So I didn't really have I wasn't really focused on what the bike was doing. I was just focused on my riding. So yeah, we had an alloy bike for that until probably March. Yeah, I want to say like I got my carbon in March 21. And I think the biggest mistake there was probably the rush into carbon. We didn't do enough testing on the alloy. And I think we rushed into going into carbon, and obviously going straight into carbon, there's a lot of things that make up carbon. So like obviously different layers, stiffness, the flex. And yeah, I just think, to be honest, like that bike just didn't work, hasn't worked for me the last 3 seasons. I struggle with it a lot. I think being a heavier rider and a lot more aggressive than the likes of Laurie and Dave and Tuhudel now, it just didn't really suit my style, and it hasn't suited my style. So yeah, I've struggled with that bike for the last 3 years a lot. And I don't take anything away from Mondraker. Like, they've put everything into it to make it better for us. And, it's not easy. Obviously, when you create a carbon bike, it's, not cheap. So obviously having to change that is a huge thing. So, yeah, I think for, the likes of Laurie, he was able to get away with riding that bike and obviously riding it to the limit, and was able to get podiums on it. But for myself, I felt like it kind of similar to the GT. Like when I started pushing, I struggled a lot. I didn't really know what the bike would do. I had a lot of like front wheel, like no grip on the front wheel. The back would sit in a lot. So like we did so much trying to fine tune like shocks to, from shim stacks to heavier springs, more progressive linkages. But yeah, I just don't think any of that worked for me. And obviously, the faster the tracks we have now, like I think the more progressive a bike is going to be, it's going to be a lot better to be able to set you up in the suspension, but also be able to work really good as well. And I think like the suspension platform hasn't really worked out for me.
And I know Laurie had issues as well. I know that from chatting to him. So he was a challenge to get it set up for him, and it's much lighter. Yeah,
I mean, like for me, and like I'm being honest, and I don't, I'm not putting Mondraker down, and they make some amazing bikes, and their bikes look great. But just like for me, every week, like last year was like the tipping point for me. Like I didn't know what to do. Like I was going around in circles every weekend. I felt like a race weekend for me was a test weekend, and I was just testing to get the bike set up to where I was comfortable, where I was able to put a race run together. But that race run together for me was so not satisfying because I wasn't even qualifying at some World Cups, and I was coming, 30s, 40s. And for me, that's like so disappointing and so not where I expect myself to be. Yeah. So I lost so much confidence and trust. And as soon as I lost that, everything just went out the window like that. And that was lost from Lords. And like, I feel like I'm mentally pretty strong, and I put myself in a good place when it comes to, setting myself up heading into World Cup. So I feel like I have a pretty good vision on what I want to do and what I want to achieve. And when that, goes out the door for me, I feel like everything goes out the door, and it's hard when I'm not in the right headspace with what I'm dealing with is super hard to come back from, especially when you're just going around in circles. So like for me, confidence and trust was the biggest issue that I had last year, and from that, like, I lost the love of racing my bike. You know, like, I'd be at the top warming up and I'd be like, well, I'm just racing my bike today. It felt like a job for me. It felt like work. Didn't feel like I was going there to have fun.
Yeah.
So, like, that really hurt me, and it really tipped me over, and hence why I didn't race Val de Sol last year, because I was to the point where I was like, well, why should I race when my result's potentially just going to be a mediocre result, and I'm also, you know, risking my life to put one run together for, you know, 40th place. So, you know, that's where I got to, and you know, like, I feel like I'm a person that would never give up, and I wouldn't not race a race. But for me, when I got to there, it was just the tipping point, and I felt like I just needed to stop riding and take a break and regroup and figure out, you know, what I was going to do for the next season. I literally got to the point where I was like, with GT, like, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to change brands? Am I going to go to a different bike? Like, you know, it's super hard with like creating a new bike, especially in such a short period of time from when we finished racing to now. So yeah, it was sort of like, I was really worried because I didn't want to go into another season of the same results, the same headspace where I was in last year.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what's the outcome?
Well, we've got a new bike coming. We're just waiting on. Obviously, it's not easy process with bikes. But fingers crossed, we'll have something maybe end of February, sometime in March.
Yeah.
Which I'm holding high hopes on. Which is like, you know, for me, I think it's like just hearing small things, like hearing about the bike, seeing the bike, just being told what's going on gives me that small little hope and builds my confidence in, you know, getting that confidence back to where it was.
Yeah.
Because I feel like myself, I have everything there to get back to where I am. I just, you know, obviously the older you get, the more wiser you get and the more knowledge you have in bikes and how they work. And for me, a bike, I feel like a bike to me is, I need to be at one with it. I need to know what it's doing.
Yeah.
Whereas like last year and the previous 2 years before that, I didn't really have that. And I think it's super important to, you know, have trust and confidence in your equipment, because it's going to get you to, you know, where you want to be. And, you know, as soon as those results come, that's when everything else follows. And I think like it's so important to be able to have fun on your bike. And when you're not having fun on your bike, it sucks.
100%.
What was the main motivating factor to stay with Mondraker? Because obviously you just said there a few difficult seasons, and you weighed up your options. Why have you decided to stay?
Well, I still had another year with Mondraker. But like, to be honest, Marcus, the owner, he's really good, and he struggled to see where I was at in Val de Sol, and he knew what I was going through and the difficulties, and he was pretty open about like, if there's something there for you, then go for it. Like, if it's going to be something better for you, you know, go for it. But, you know, I feel like I have, like, I'm pretty, what's the word? Like, I've been with Mondraker for 6 years, so I kind of like, my loyalty to them and to Marcus is pretty high, and I wouldn't want to let him down. And I know like how much him and Lucas are pushing Mondraker to get this new bike. So, you know, I obviously want to, with my, you know, existing contract, I still want to stay, but it was just that, you know, I was scared of what it was, another year would do to my career. Like, it's pretty cutthroat, our sport now. So, but like, I've been like keeping in touch with them and just like trying to be updated just to give me that small hope of, knowing that I'm going to get a new bike and just the confidence, to try and build off those conversations and knowing that something new's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Brooke, you mentioned before that you're usually not someone that gives up easily. And I can remember in 2018 in Croatia, the first World Cup, you qualified first. And then obviously, I'll always remember, watching you from the finish, you like slid out on that drop and crashed really hard and broke your collarbone and a couple of ribs. But it was not like because no one was coming after you as well. You just got up and rode to the finish. So I was just like, is that a joke?
With a broken collarbone.
Probably the most rocky and gnarly and yeah. So like, how hard was? I mean, you had a couple of hard crashes in your time, but how hard was that crash to take? Because that looked pretty horrible.
Fuck, it was hard. Like especially on those rocks. It was. I mean, that whole track was just a rocks. Rocks, yeah. So, and it was pretty. Like that section was quite fast, so like you kind of come off and sort of scrubbed off a drop, and I just remember scrubbing and like I feel like it wasn't something it wasn't my fault. There was just, I guess, probably maybe some gravel on there that when I just pushed my front down, it just slid out and I went over the bars. And I was so winded. I got up and I like walked around. I was like, I'm sweet. Like lifted my shoulder up. I was like, oh, it's a bit sore. And at the time I was like, fuck, I just don't want to have the issues of like being taken down by medics and just the whole process of it. So I thought like it was a good idea just to ride my bike down and it would be faster for me to get from there to the bottom with a broken collarbone. And at the time I didn't know it was a broken collarbone, and when I got taken to the hospital I was like lifting my arm up and I was like, oh yeah, no, there's something definitely wrong there. But yeah, I don't know, I just manned it out and rode my bike down.
Yeah, there's a lot. I remember there's a lot of fans on the side of the track. Hey, you got you get the crowd going, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I remember stopping and like putting my the side of where my broken collarbone was. I remember stopping on the side and like waving to the people, and I was just like, like in full agony.
But I mean, through the weekend, you look like fired up. Like, was there like some kind of? We talked about GT and how it was there for you. Like, it looked like you wanted to send a message, like you're back.
Yeah,
like,
Yeah, I definitely did, and I felt like I proved that. And to be honest, like I reckon if I didn't have that crash, I would have won that race. I just felt so good. Like I felt everything around the team environment, the team itself was good, and we had a good bike. I knew like going back to Mondraker that I was going back to a good bike. So yeah, I don't know. I felt like I was real fired up for that season, and obviously I still had a great season that year, but I always think back and look back on 2018 and like if I didn't have that crash in Lords, where would have that season taken me? Would it have taken me to an overall or a top 3 or a top 5? And I don't know, for me sometimes it's hard to look back on that, but I also look back on it with a lot of positives, and it's always good to look back on and know that I'm still capable of getting those results.
So you get your collarbone plated, yeah? Because you you got 11 6 weeks after your crash, so I guess you.
That's still nuts.
No, I didn't. I actually didn't get my collarbone plated. I literally went home and I was just so like, I was tunnel vision of like, I'm going to be racing Fort William. So I kind of did everything I could. Like I was going to get x-rays like every 2 weeks. I was having like cold laser on my shoulder. And like every 2 weeks, it was just going to the hospital and having x-rays was just like for me, like to get into my own head that it's healing. It's, it's coming right. And I just like did everything I possibly do to get my shoulder back and ready for Fort William. It was a clean break, so it didn't need to be plated. I could have got it plated, but I sort of weighed up like going under, having anesthetic and, all of those factors that it would probably be easier not having that and just letting it heal on its own. And which it did. Like, I think it healed within like 3 weeks. So I was like 3 weeks and I was able to do push-ups on it. So that was kind of an indication of me being able to ride my bike again.
Yeah, that's great. I kind of knew you've gonna say you're not gonna had it plated. It's not really a surprise. So yeah, you said it. 2018. What could have been? Yeah, after with your injury, but you still had a great season. 6th overall. You got 2/3. So I guess after the 2 GT seasons that were hard, you kind of like must have felt you back to your best riding that you had.
Yeah, definitely. I felt, definitely felt 2018 season was probably my best season I've ever had. Just with everything, like Laurie and I were just going back and forth with results. And we were literally just bouncing off each other, which was awesome. And, we had a good team dynamic running there. So, yeah, everything just sort of fell into place and worked really well.
So 2019 was going well. You took the win at Crankwork Innsbruck, 6th in Val Nord, and 30th was your worst result all season. Hopes must have been high coming into Worlds in Mont Saint Anne. I think we all know what happened at Worlds in Mont Saint Anne, and there's a lot to chat about, and we'll do just that after these messages. That's a good place to break. You there, Emmy? Are you all right to carry on? Is she going to get a charger, I think?
A charger.
So, looking at the results sheet, Brooke, right from the back at the start, there's no gaps really. Right from the start of your career up until Worlds 2019, you've been racing for the best part of a decade with no major injuries. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah.
I mean, even the broken collarbone, you didn't miss any World Cups because of that.
Nah. I think the only World Cups that I've missed is the World Cups that I haven't qualified at.
Yeah.
And Val d'Isole.
Okay, so we believe it was first run of the day. Talk us through what happened, mate.
Yeah, it was first run of the day on the second and last day of practice. So it was like, Friday qualifying, and then we have that Saturday, like 3 hours practice, and then we go into finals. And I was like, I just obviously come off a 3rd place qualifying, and Mount St. Anne is one of my favorite tracks. So like I was pretty fired up. Like I felt like I was at the peak of my season. World Champs was like where I was peaking. And yeah, my initial idea was just to go into that last day of practice and just do potentially 1 or 2 runs. I was literally going to judge that after how I felt after my first run. And I dropped in probably got like maybe I would say like what do you reckon, Jack? Like 20 seconds into where all that boggy sort of section is, where it's sort of like you go from the start, go through those small trees, and then flattens off, and then you sort of like dropped into that new section.
Yeah, it's not far.
Nah, and that was a new section for World Champs, so it was quite like we had rained the day before, and it was quite boggy. So I stopped there and just scoped the line out, pushed back up, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to do like depending on how I feel, I'm going to do a top to bottom. And like I literally nailed that section, and from there I was just like, fuck, this is how my race run is going to be. And like I wasn't obviously going as fast as I probably would have gone in my race run, but just like everything, I felt real nimble. Like I was linking all those flat corners up and just like got everything so perfect. And then I come into like probably the third to last small bit of woods. And yeah, it was like dropped into like a small, like a 90-degree turn and then over a rock roll. And the previous day, like on qualifying day, we had so much rain, so the track got pretty blown out. And I know before me, I think Reece Wilson had a massive crash on it. I think Flo Payer had a big crash and maybe one other person. And yeah, so come into this right-hander, went to go over this rock roll and clipped my front wheel slid on. Oh, sorry, my back wheel slid on like a small exposed root, which just like put me off balance and basically sent me over the handlebars. And I literally thought in the air that I was capable of riding it out, but like as soon as I got to the that point where your ass is basically on the tire, I knew this was all over. And yeah, basically from there I hit the ground so fucking hard that I fractured my T12 and burst my L1, and like the impact that I hit the ground on literally blew me from one side of the track off to the side of it. And it happened so quickly. Like I literally went from that top of the rock to being on the ground to being off the side within, I don't know, 5-6 seconds. And I just remember like I was in so much fucking agony, and I was on my side and I was trying to roll onto my back, and I couldn't, like I actually literally couldn't roll onto my back because my legs obviously were paralyzed. So I didn't, and at the time I didn't really know, like I was obviously in shock and adrenaline and fucking God knows what else, like just everything around me was just like a blur. And I literally just was like, fucking hell, this is not good. And like I knew that I needed to get to the hospital as soon as possible. And I needed to like be stabilized and be put into, a position where I was comfortable. So as soon as the medics turned up, I was still like obviously in that side position, and they transferred me into a stretcher and left me in that on that side position, took me out and sort of regrouped and got me semi-what comfortable. And then they were like, oh, I was like, fucking, I need to get out of here. Like, I need to get out of here. I knew how bad this injury was, and I knew like I just didn't have a great feeling, and I wanted to be in hospital just so I was comfortable and had an idea of what was going on. And they fucking tried to put me on this quad with like on this trailer and take me down the hill, and Jack and Emilie, you know how fucking gnarly that side of the hill is where they drive those quads up.
Rough ski run, yeah. It's not a track. Yeah.
So they wanted to take me down that with with a spinal injury, and they got me on it, and I'm like, fuck, no way. Like, I was like, as soon as they moved, and like, I didn't really know it, like, I was, to me, I just wanted to be at the fucking bottom of the hill as soon as possible, taken out of there. And like, Win and Blinky were like, no, you fucking can't do that. Like, fucking get him off. And I was like, right, you guys need to get me a helicopter. Like, now I need a helicopter. Like, I need to be taken out of here as soon as possible. And they're like, yep, sweet. We'll call up a helicopter. And so they called up a helicopter, and fuck, it was probably like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes had gone by. And I'm like, fuck, like, where is this helicopter? Like, you called in for a helicopter 20 minutes ago, and this helicopter's not here. And they're like, oh, yeah, here it is. Because I could hear a helicopter above me. But, like, they were just giving me false information, and fucking the helicopter that come past me wasn't for me. And that sort of, like, repeatedly kept happening. And I don't know, 4 hours later, a fucking helicopter turned up. And when it turned up, it circled for half an hour because there was nowhere to, like, there was no helipad to put the heli down. So they were like freaking out about that. And I had, like, luckily I had PD there for, like, the whole lot of 4 hours, which was, like, really comforting because he was there, he spoke English. I had, like, French speaking people around me, so it didn't make it any easier. And, like, just having him around really made, like, that whole experience a little bit nicer than what it was. And so yeah, like, as soon as, when that helicopter was there, they were having arguments, and, like, one dude who was walking the track was a pilot for a heli that lifts out logs, and he was like, look, this is what you need to do. You just need to come in and put the skids into the side of the hill, and you can load them like that. And they were just, like, fucking having big arguments about that, and, like, saying, no, we can't do that. And yeah, so eventually they did that. So they got me in the helicopter, and, like, in that meantime of that 4 hours, like, there was only 2 doctors on the hill. So one doctor at the time when I had my accident was up sorting out another person, and then the other doctor was at the cross country for a dude who fucking had a massive crash and knocked himself out, got back on his bike and went over the handlebars and dislocated his hip, and spent, like, 4 laps on the side of the track before he was actually taken out and taken into an ambulance. So it was just a bit of a shit show. And then when that doctor got to me, like, they had no pain relief. So, like, I was, like, probably just getting, like, I don't know, some paracetamol, like, rated sort of drugs, and fuck, that didn't do anything. And I had so much of it over that course of 4 hours that, I was still in so much pain. And then my partner, Lucy, and Marcus had gone to the hospital, so they were already at the hospital when I was just about taking off in the heli. And they asked, I think in the ED room, that if they knew anything about a mountain biker coming in with a spinal injury, and they were like, yeah, we know about that. And they were like, well, he's coming in by heli. And they were like, well, our heli is under construction at the moment, so they won't be flying here. So literally, I think Marcus had to call someone who had to relay to PD, and then PD had to tell, I think, the pilots. I don't know, it was just a fucking massive cluster. And then, so we flew to Quebec Airport, which was like 25 minutes. Got out of the heli into an ambulance, which was like another 20 minutes. And, like, their roads over there, how, like, every 100 meters they got splits in them. So, like, yep. I'm in and their ambulances over there are so fucking big and heavy. So, like, every split in the road that I was going over, it was just like boof, boof. So every time I was going over there, I could just feel like my lower back moving. and it was the most excruciating pain I ever been through. And like that 20 minutes felt like it was like 2 hours getting to the hospital. And I got to the hospital, and then I got into doing all my scans, MRIs, and I was pretty like dazed at that point, and didn't really know what was going on. And by the time I got there, it was probably like 5 o'clock, and then I never got out from there until about 10 o'clock. So like it was too late to do surgery. And luckily my, like, I think within 12 to 24 hours, there's that time frame of being able to operate and actually potentially fix everything and potentially have, regain feeling in your legs. So yeah, like in that whole period of from 5 to 10, I had all those scans, seen doctors, had ketamine, went on a fucking crazy trip, left my body, and like was in Mars walking around on space dust, and doctor shoving a finger up my ass. It was just the most crazy and bizarre experience. And like probably like the highlight of that from 5 to 10 o'clock with all the scans and having checked over was actually when, I don't know, it doesn't sound pleasant, but when the doctor put his finger up my ass and asked me to clench, and I was able to clench and feel it, like that gave me, he was like, oh, that's a great sign. And I was like, oh, this is a lot of hope.
Yeah.
And like, obviously because I was paralyzed, and like, I think that's a indicator for them to know know how bad the damage is, whether you can like squeeze your sphincter and feel that. So that, like, obviously being on ketamine and fucking having that done to me, I was still like out of this world and didn't know what was going on. But like for me, that was like a great indicator of like when he said that, like I was, there was potential there to regain feeling in my legs. So I went in.
Some people pay for that kind of weekend, Brooke.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely didn't. So yeah, the next day I went into surgery, and I had an 8-hour surgery and 2 rods and 8 screws put in, and decompression and my L1 all put back together. And basically from there was a full-on year of recovery. And I spent 2 weeks in Canada, not really knowing what was going on and not really knowing what I could do, because as soon as I come out of that surgery, I was like, fuck, my goal is to race the following year. Like I had that engraved into my head, and that was what I was going to do. And I think, if I didn't have that engraved into my head, I don't know if I'd be where I am today, because I could have gone down a road of just being fucking lazy and, not put in the work that I did to get to where I am, and just be, someone who's not as strong as what I am now, but like just walking around maybe with a limp, or, just living a somewhat semi-normal life. And I was like, fuck no, there's no way I'm going to do that, because obviously for, somewhat of a decade I've been racing my bike, and that's all I knew. So I wanted to get back to, doing my job and being a normal person. So those 2 weeks in Canada were a long 2 weeks, because we were obviously going back and forth with insurance and trying to get flights back, and we're exploring other options of going to America and going to Canada to do rehab, because that's all I wanted to do, was just get stuck straight into rehab. And I had no pain whatsoever after my surgery. Like I stopped taking all the drugs that I was on, because like I remember just waking up with the sorest kidneys from, I think, all the drugs that I had, and I was just like, fuck, there's no way I'm gonna keep doing this. And I didn't really want to get hooked on anything as well, and sort of like rely on that stuff. So I was just sort of cut everything out and I was lucky enough that I had no pain whatsoever for, that whole time of my rehab. So yeah, I did that, and then I got a flight. Lucy and I got a flight back home. So she spent 2 weeks there with me, just fucking running around between Airbnbs and hotels. Like, her life was it was upside down, and I couldn't imagine what I had put her through and what fucking damage I'd done. So like, yes, we got transferred back to New Zealand. I went straight into Burwood, which was a spinal unit in Christchurch, and spent 4 weeks there. And to be honest, like, those 4 weeks were probably the best 4 weeks of my life, because I had like, so much had changed from when I got there to when I left. Like, my goal was to walk out of there with no crutches or a wheelchair or a walker. And I had great people around me there. Lucy spent the 4 weeks there with me, and we were just like in and out of rehab, and Blinky gave us his car to use, so we were like driving around and just like being somewhat of a normal person, because like, it's so hard when you're an independent person and then you get put in a situation where you can barely walk and barely do anything. So like, being able to have that, that was pretty awesome. And yeah, just I gained so much, and I was able to walk out of there with nothing. Like, obviously I had a cane for when I got tired, but I was lucky enough that I got put with a physio who knew who I was and what I did, and was also a mountain bike fan. So like, those 4 weeks were just like fucking massive progressive steps for me. And like, just like, I don't know, it felt like it wasn't a place to have fun, but I actually had a lot of fun there, because I was like noticing massive improvements each day and each week.
Yeah.
And but yeah, at the same time, it was also a pretty horrible place to be, because you're with people that are paraplegic and tetraplegic, that are, when you go to the gym and here's fucking me walking around with 2 crutches and like a big smile on my face, and these people like can hardly sit on a bike and push their legs, or like sit on a arm row and move their arms around, and they're like, looking at me while I'm having a laugh with my physio. That kind of place wasn't like, I didn't feel really comfortable, because I don't know, it was weird. I felt like, here's me happy, and then there's these people here that can hardly talk or move their arms, and they're in a place that's probably pretty dark, and I'm here walking around like, So I kind of struggled a little bit with that, but I kind of like also sort of shut myself off from it. But I'd always like come back in, and like, there was a girl who'd come in and try to commit suicide, jumped off a roof and smashed her back up, and just like that sort of shit was real hard to take. And like, seeing her sitting there in a wheelchair while I'm walking around and like looking at me, and I'm smiling at her and she's smiling back at me, but I'm like, well, you try to take your life, and here you trying to smile at me. Like, are you actually okay, or are you just smiling at me because you're happy for me walking around? I don't know. It was real weird and hard to process. But like, I put in a lot of work there, and left there in a great mindset. Like, I was able, like, I said to my physio, like, when can I ride a bike? Like, I want to ride a bike, just to know and get in my head that I can actually still ride a bike. Because, at the time I didn't really know if it was possible or not. And that was 5 weeks post-surgery, and I hopped on a bike, and fuck, I could ride a bike better than I could walk. And, that kind of told me something, and just gave me more confidence and more motivation to, for that next step of leaving Burwood and going home on my own, and, not having to rely on someone, and, someone come and get me every day. So, that really put me in a good frame of mind, heading home and being independent or somewhat independent. And then, basically spent the somewhat of, I think, maybe 6 months with my physio here in Hawke's Bay, and he done a really good job. And we just my coach gave us a program that, was tailored to getting me back to strength and just strengthening things up. Because obviously with an accident like that, everything goes. All your nerves are so damaged that nothing really works. So firing muscles was super hard, and I did so much stuff. I did acupuncture 4 times a week. I did massage. I did chiropractor. I was just so my whole week, my 7 days was so busy for 4 months that it didn't burn me out, but it almost did. And I had a tunnel vision. So anything around me was just not feasible of being thought of. And I just, my thought was just get back to riding my bike and to where I was. And so luckily with, when I had my accident, there was no racing after it. So I had that whole season to prepare myself. And then even more lucky, I went into 2020 and COVID happened. So that kind of put everything out of place, and I was able to come back and race. And 6 months after my accident, I had half of my rods taken out, which was a game changer. I don't think if I hadn't had them taken out, I would be anywhere what I am today. I think that limited me a lot. And so when I had those taken out, I had 6 weeks recovery, and that's when I found out everything happened with COVID. Because my idea was to be back for the first World Cup in I think it was Maribor. And to me, that wasn't stupid, but I'm pretty sure to everyone else it was probably a stupid idea. And now I look back on it, it was probably not doable. Well, in my head, it was doable, and I probably would have made it happen. But I'm glad everything happened in 2020, and I was able to just come back when, I had another, 2 or 3 months to get fit and get strong again and be able to ride my bike. And went overseas in 2020 and did 6 weeks of riding just around Europe, which was awesome. And I felt like I'd never left my bike. And I don't know, obviously I still had a lot of difficulties with fatigue in my legs and being able to feel where the pedal was when I was unclipping and clipping in and stuff like that. But yeah, it all come around pretty quickly. It's probably I think, I like to say that I'm fully recovered now, and obviously I'm still getting stronger. And
can I just pause you there, Brooke? Because we've skipped ahead massively on the script here because you talk so well about it. It's your story. There's a couple of things I wanted to ask though. The first one is that I still can't believe that I'm saying this, but the World Championships, the absolute pinnacle of our sport, you had to wait 5 hours for a helicopter evacuation. Have the UCI ever contacted you and apologised for that?
Not really. I think I don't know. No one really contacted me and asked if everything was okay. I think Simon Burney messaged me, but I never really got a message. And, that kind of fucking pissed me off because, at the end of the day, it's, their organisation of putting that race together. And I feel like it would have been nice for even, I don't even know if someone, come in and seen me. That would have been nice. But no, nothing really happened of that. And it pissed me off for a long time, but I knew that I couldn't let it get to me because otherwise it would just sit there and I'd just boil on it and it would just certain things would just piss me off. So I kind of just try to put that aside. And yeah, I didn't hear. Obviously, Simon was the only person that really apologised, but no one else in the UCI contacted me and asked if I was okay or apologised for what happened, which I think is pretty piss poor because, at the end of the day, we're the ones that are putting on the show for them.
Yeah. So I think in Fort William, you said that you thought very little had changed with regards to safety and rider safety. Is that the number one priority for the Riders Association, Emmy?
Yeah, of course. I think it was one of the reasons why it was created in the first place. In the past years, like the riders were communicating through like chats and stuff with technical delegates of the UCI about like track changes and stuff, and it was a bit hectic at times and a bit heated, but I feel like now with having like an external person from the association like me, it would be easier so the riders don't like in the heat of the moment get a little bit caught up and like in words or whatever and try to like make stuff happen. I've had a few talks with Rory Kinnigan from ESO head of sports, and he's like pretty confident that next season is going to be a lot like put in place for safety. So we've heard good things, so we're going to see what is going to actually happen, and the association I'll be there at every race trying to like make sure the riders race in the safest conditions.
So the next bit is from personal experience. I wanted to ask you this. In 2016, I had a big one at Glencoe, tore my liver, ended up in hospital, 9 days in hospital. Nothing compared to what you've gone through. And I distinctly remember my wife coming up to me as I'm laid in A&E, and she went, "Well, that's the end of that then, isn't it? No more racing downhill. We'll find something else to do." And she always tells the story that I said, "At finish, I'm only just getting started," as I'm kind of laid there on the bed in A&E. What was the reaction of your nearest and dearest when you told them, "Oh, I'm going to race World Cups"?
No one really told me anything. I know deep down, like, that Lucy didn't want me to keep racing.
Yeah.
Obviously, because what I put her through. She obviously wouldn't want to experience it again. But, like, she never said that to me. She never told me that this is it, you've got to stop racing. She kind of semi-hinted, but she knew that, like, this is what I've done for the best part of half of my life. So, at the end of the day, like, it's my job. And for me, like, I know I look back on it and it's just something that had put a pause in my life, and I unpaused it and carried on. And yeah, I think, up until that point, I thought I was indestructible, and I still probably somewhat think I am indestructible. Like, I've taken some fucking massive crashes after I've broken my back and thought, how have I not broken my back again? So, yeah, I think...
linking to that, something that I have always wanted to ask. When you crashed, were you wearing a back protector?
I was wearing a back protector, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I to be honest, I don't think if I had a back protector on or not, I don't think it would have, I think it would have been the same, because I think it was just the way I landed and the impact. Because I kind of landed like into it was like a slight uphill with just hard sheer rock on it. So like, yeah, I kind of just like landed into a small uphill and folded in half. And yeah, I just don't think like, I don't know, anything would have stopped that.
Yeah, for sure.
Back on script, Jack.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, 13 months later, you're back racing at Crankworks Innsbruck, and you didn't exactly just turn up and roll down the hill. You finished 11th. I was interviewed recently by a guy who's doing some kind of PhD or whatever about mental toughness. and he asked me as part of the interview who I thought on the circuit was a demonstration of mental toughness in downhill, and obviously my go-to was yourself. I just think what you've been through and the fact you've come back in the way you have is absolutely incredible, and I know nobody would disagree with that.
Cheers, bro.
The question is, how hard has this psychological battle been for you? Are you through it and out the other side? And what I mean by that, because I personally, for me, the mentally toughest people in downhill are the ones that can deal with adversity. And I think the biggest adversity in downhill is the risk of injuring yourself and potentially going through what you've been through. So has that doubt or that what if something happening again, has it completely gone? Are you back to the Brook Macdonald that you were before that incident?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I am the Brooke Macdonald I am before the accident. Like it's funny and it's weird because like the way I look at it is like I've had like such a significant injury in my life, but it's my back, and I feel like my back is the most furthest bit of bone away from everything else that I'm in control of on my bike, if you get what I mean. Like, you know, like my wrists and my knees and my ankles probably come first, and then my shoulders, and then my ribs, and then my back. I don't know. That's the way I looked at it, and I'm like, fuck. Well, the last thing that's going to happen is like probably breaking my back if I'm going to land on it. But I feel like everything else is like I'm protected from everything else. I'm protected with my arms and with my legs, and I think it's just the way. If I was to break my back again, it would be the way that I'd land on it. If you get what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird because
I completely agree with your logic, because when you think about it, if everybody could look at what you've been through and go, "Oh fuck, I don't want that," and we could all retire tomorrow. Like,
yeah,
we love what we do. This happened to you. You've recovered from it, and hopefully it'll never happen to you or anyone else again. So, yeah, I completely agree, and I think anybody looking in who does this sport should use you as an example of how to overcome any kind of injury adversity.
Thank you, bro.
So anyway, moving on then to 2021. I mean, 15th in Maribor and 18th in Lenzerheide. As you said, I think you said it to us before, like getting top 20s at this sport, the way the sport is now in terms of the level, I guess you must feel like you're pretty much back to the best of your riding as well.
Yeah, definitely, bro. And to be honest, like I was obviously happy with those results. Like that was a massive achievement for me. But you know, as an athlete, you want more, and like that's everything that you want. And like you obviously set goals and you set bars of what you want to achieve. And you know, like my achievement for that 21 season was to be a consistent top 15 rider and have some top 10s, and they obviously didn't happen. But you know, like people would say, oh, well, but you've come back from a massive life-changing injury. But for me, like that injury was in 2019, and I recovered from that. Obviously, I was still recovering, but my mindset wasn't, you know, I wasn't going to blame my injury on my results, and I wasn't going to, you know, say, oh, you know, today I was a bit fatigued and, you know, my back was a bit sore. You know, I had already moved on from my injury and moved on to, you know, what I wanted to achieve next.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a weird thing to say. I don't know if it is a compliment, but what I put in the script was the greatest compliment I can give you is that, like, I'm looking at the results in 2022 and I look at it and go, fuck, what's happened to Brook? He's not having a very good season. And at no point do you think, oh, he had his broken back, didn't he? And like, we're doing the first half of this podcast and you're talking about stuff and I'm like, oh fuck, he broke his back. You know, like we've got to that bit yet. And you're talking about 2022 and I'm like, this is a guy who broke his back just a few years ago, yeah. And you still, in my head, my expectations gone back to, well, why ain't he on the podium kind of? Why ain't he in the top 10?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, definitely. I definitely understand that. But just, yeah, to be honest, 2022 was probably the shittest season I've ever had in my career. And like to a point where I actually didn't even enjoy riding my bike, like I was tuning up. And like I would get into this mind frame of like excitement and know that like I'd visualize and, you know, manifest on what potentially could happen for my weekend. And as soon as I hopped on the bike and one small thing happened, like, you know, like an unexpected front wheel wash, that was my weekend done, because I knew that was where the confidence and trust went out the window.
So much
and
of
that,
psychological.
Yeah, massively. And like, I don't know, I feel like, it's just, I don't know, as soon as you get that, like, you know, you just need to look at riders like that have the confidence and trust in their equipment, look how good they're doing. And I think like, I don't know, Bernard, I think like is a great example. He's someone with so much confidence and, you know, obviously has had a, you know, up and down career of results. And like, as soon as like one results happen, he's just like, his confidence just goes sky high. And he even still has so much confidence when things aren't going well. And like, I think that's just the, you know, the person he is and what he can do. But like, obviously everyone's different. And for me, like, I think, you know, for me, results and getting good results is a huge confidence for me. And like, and I think also having a good bike and having a good equipment and being with one of it all is like a huge confidence boost for me too. Because as soon as I jump on a bike and I know how good it is, that's just when I know everything's right. And obviously from there, you know, you can change a lot of things to make it better. But as soon as like, you know, I could jump on my 2019 bike and go faster than I could on my current bike, I reckon. Just because I know what it rides like and I know how it rides and I know what it's done for me in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You so you told us a lot about this 2022 season and how tough it was, and also the relationship with the bike. It wasn't a zero stem, but it's not ideal. But this year you also went to Hardline, and I want to know a little bit more about that because I think it was amazing that you went, and I saw it come a couple of videos of you hitting like the on-off and the 90-footer and stuff. You didn't end up racing, but you weren't the only one that didn't race. After all you've been through and all the story that you talked about now for through this podcast, how do you still like enjoy getting out of the comfort zone like that? Like that's a pretty hard getting out of the comfort zone event.
Yeah, you're definitely right there, Emilie. Obviously, with pulling out of Val d'Isole, like my team is like, well, do you actually feel like you need to go to Hardline? Do you think you should go to Hardline? And like in my head, I wanted to because I wanted, like you said, I wanted to take myself out of my comfort zone, and I had not done stuff that big since I last went to Hardline, or since I did my Dream Track. And like, you know, Dream Track obviously wasn't anything compared to what Hardline is, but like I just wanted to go there just to know for myself that I was still capable of being able to handle doing that sort of stuff. And like, it was obviously it was a fucking scary week, and every jump that I ticked off was just like, you know, I was just building confidence and more confidence. And like when I hit those 90 footers, like that was just like everything was like so much easier. And like I just felt like had been like a massive weight lifted off my shoulders, and the fact of knowing for myself I was still able to do that stuff. And like, I mean, I could have just stopped and put my bike down and been happy with how I rode that week. And obviously, like, you know, still dealing with like the trust and confidence in the bike and being able to put together a full top to bottom race run at Hardline is like mentally challenging. Like it's not like just racing a downhill where you kind of like go as fast as you can. You've still got like massive jumps to overcome, and like, you know, knowing all your speeds and what speeds to hit stuff at, like that was just like super overwhelming. And I also had some bike issues as well that I didn't really want to race on, and obviously potentially have risk. But yeah, Hardline was a great week, and like it was just a week of like building confidence and taking myself out of my comfort zone, which was really awesome. And like I left there with like a massive smile on my face, and like I knew that I could just go home and put my bike down and be happy after the season that I had. And that was kind of just like a small step in the right direction of building some confidence towards the season.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like not having to race Valdisocus and like not feeling like it was worth the risk, and then going to somewhere with like a better setting, like with friends, and like finding your mojo back kind of stuff is like, and then you finished the year strong as well with second place at Crankworks. So I guess it proved it to be the right choice to go to Hardline and find that confidence back. So you fired up for 2023, I guess. Hey.
Yeah, I am. I'm really looking forward to it. I've changed quite a bit in like my training this year. I went and spent 3 days at a integrated intensive training course up in Auckland, which was awesome, which was just a lot of breathing work, but also a lot of like figuring out how to handle stress tolerances and how to handle situations like I was in 2022, and just being able to deal with that and not fall back into the place I was. So I did that, which was awesome, and I feel like it's changed a lot on my outlook on life and how to approach things and how to approach stuff if it's not in place for me, because I feel like I'm a pretty detailed and perfectionist person, and you know, not everything is perfect these days, and it's hard to come by having perfect everything. So like being able to make it somewhat perfect and being able to deal with that with everything that I learned on this breathing course has been really good. And like, you know, I'm meditating every day and like doing mobility and a bunch of other stuff that I probably would never have done, and like just change the way of how I breathe and those sorts of things has been really cool.
Nice.
Well, let's finish things off with some questions about the future. Are we right in saying you're 31 or are you 30?
31, yeah.
Well, 31. 1 year left with Mondraker, like you said. What are the aspirations going into this year? Or the ones you can share with us?
Yeah, obviously with a new bike coming, hopes to be able to have a great season. I definitely want to be a consistent top 10, top 15 rider. That's always my goal, and it would be a dream to add some podiums in there. But also just to get the love of riding my bike back and enjoying it and having fun, because I think that's going to get me a long way with results.
Sure. Okay. How many times have you been national champ now? Is that a target?
Maybe once. I think I've only been national champ once or twice.
Blinky has been so many times, hasn't he?
Yeah. I'm normally away when national champs is on. I'm normally in Europe doing some testing or something. So for a lot of it, I've missed that. But yeah, national champs this year, it would definitely be cool to get that jersey.
And then final question, what are your feelings about ESO and about the changes that we've seen for 2023 in a nutshell? How are you looking at it?
To be honest, I don't really know. Like, I'm I don't know. It's a hard one. I think I just want to race my bike, and I just want to have a good series that is going to work well for us. And like, yeah, I don't know, Emilie, what like we've had multiple chats about it. And like, to be honest, like to be brutally honest, when we had a meeting, I zoned out after 40 minutes because I felt like what we'd proposed didn't really get anywhere. And like, I think at the end of the day, like I said earlier, we are the show. Like, we are the important people. So like, obviously we want to work with the ESO and make it better, but we also want to, we don't know what they're going to make better. And I don't know, it's sort of nervous of how it's going to be made better. You've probably got a better idea, Jack, being a team manager and maybe having a bit more understanding, but to be honest, I zone out a little bit because I just fucking want everything to be as simple as possible and just make it easy for us and easy for people to watch and tune in, and easy for teams.
Basically, you want to be able to trust them to deliver what we need, and I think the big thing at the moment is, like you say, they're not really communicating with the riders, and I mean, they might be communicating with the elite team managers, but the rest of us just get sent a little summary document once the decisions have been made. We don't get any. So yeah.
I feel like we definitely need to be way more involved than what we are. Like, I mean, that press release that was released, no one knew about that. Like,
you see it now. So.
Like, we should have been told that before it was released. And, obviously when something like that happens, it fucking pisses people off. And, that doesn't put people in good places of reading something that's been put on the internet that we're going to go and race and potentially compete in their series this year, and not telling us before. Like, if they told us before, it would have been awesome, because then we could have discussed about it and, come up with things that work in our favor, and things that work in their favor. So yeah, I just don't know yet. I have some trust in them, but I don't have full trust. Like, I just want to know what's going to happen. I know they have like a lot on their plate, building not a new series, but changing a lot of things.
Yep.
I just hope.
That's the decision, to change a lot of things. We are like, oh, maybe it'll be best to leave it for a year and see how it go. Yeah. And the decisions were made to change a lot of things. So now they have a lot on their plate, for sure.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, exactly. And like, why change something if it's not broken? Like, I think we've, like, Red Bull done a great job, and I think like they could bring what Red Bull had and maybe change some small things, or change what they think, but like maybe do that for a year, and if it works well, keep it. If it doesn't, then finish the season, talk to us, and change what they want to change, or discuss what they think could be changed. I don't know.
Yeah, as I say, I hope that you guys setting up the Riders Union and Emmy and Nico heading that up. I just hope that can find real strength and get to a point where what is happening with that does carry weight, because it's exactly what you said before. I've said it before on the podcast. Without the riders, they've got nothing.
Yeah, and I just don't want to see small teams being pushed aside, like yourself, Jack, with running a team that doesn't have a massive budget, like, Specialized in Trek. Like, we all are the face of the sport, whether, it's Trek or your small team. Like, you've still got riders on there that are potential top 20 riders. Like, why try and push teams out like that? And like, if you're going to do that, what are you going to create for them? Like, you're going to create a smaller series that is going to potentially bring them into the elite level of our sport, with being able to bring in, sponsors that are going to be able to put good budgets into, making it affordable to cover, the cost of registration and all of that stuff.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, as you just said, they've doubled the entry fees for a team our size to register. And
Yeah, what does it cost? Like 12,500?
That's for elite teams. So for a mountain bike team like mine, it used to be €2,500, and now they've doubled it. And in the document they send you, there's no clear explanation as to why it would be double. The only thing is because there's a different media outlet, you're paying double. That's it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you
Like
have to
what?
have the trust that you're getting something for your money that you weren't getting before.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to know what benefits if you're paying €5,000, you want to know what benefits you're getting, and know what it's worth.
Exactly. But yeah, it seems like all the riders and a lot of people we speak to are saying the same things. So hopefully the message will get through.
Yeah. Hopefully,
you just need to get try to work with ESO and people from broadcasting. You need to find a positive way to try to make them understand what downhill is, what downhill is for us, and try to because they want to do something out of downhill for their broadcast. And I feel we need to find a positive way to say, okay, we want to try to help you grow the sport, but downhill is that for us, and we're trying to keep that as true as possible. And that's really hard to do, but we are learning. I'm learning every week. And I think
you've got a big job in me.
And it was still in January, and I think for the riders, they are in their preparation, and it's hard to get into doing surveys and doing meetings and doing this and doing that, and nothing is quite concrete. But I try to motivate the troops and make sure that people all can race something that they really look forward to,
Yeah. That's the most important thing, is that we know what we're getting at. What we're going to be racing. The whole semi-final things. I don't know about that. I just don't. I think, why change it? Why not just keep qualifying in finals? We spoke about Emilie. Fuck, imagine having a qualifying semis and final on Mount St. Anne, Fort William, or Val di Sole, And it's not like we're not complaining, and we're not pussies. We fucking put everything into the sport, but the way our sport is going, and we're the level we're at is you have to be on it 110% from when you leave that gate to when you cross that finish line. And I think adapting to all of those 3 races is going to be so hard, and it's going to be so taxing. And 2 days of qualifying and finals is already taxing, so imagine adding another race. I think it's going to be twice as hard.
Yeah, sure.
We certainly live in interesting times. Well, look, thank you for making the time to come on the pod, Brooke, and thank you for your honesty. I wasn't expecting anywhere near that level of honesty when I asked which was the 2
I'm
bikes.
a pretty honest person.
Best of luck for next season. I hope you get the bike that you really want, and we can see the Bulldog back in the top 10s. You're an inspiration, I think, to not just me, but to pretty much everybody in mountain biking. And that's it for another episode. Thanks to the sponsors of the show: Hope Technology, JTech Suspension, Revolution Bike Park, Ride Southern Spain, Schwalbe, and SingleTrackWorld.com. As always, if you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you've got a sec, please drop us a review. Alternatively, please give us a follow on Instagram at Making Up the Numbers Racing, or Facebook.com/Making Up the Numbers. Thanks for listening. We'll be back very soon.